Alright, so here we are today with a wonderful little story about a series of failed and shattered dreams.
Yeah, this is maximum effort content. More time is going to be spent editing this than filming it. And both of those are going to be measured in hours, not minutes, so...
Oh no.
I hope no one watches this, but... maybe that's not the best way to start it, is it?
Nah, it's okay, keep going.
Yeah,
so okay.
We just unloaded the boat.
It is literally 8 feet beneath us. We
basically, yeah.
hosed it all up, we stacked it all up, and we are contemplating our life choices.
Yeah, and the boat is, this is basically the end of its cardboard camp life. It's never going to be used in a proper week again. It's likely never going to be used by cardboard camp again. Relatively shortly, it's going to be signed over to me. The title that we definitely have for it will be transferred, and the ownership will take place, or swap will take place. And so, you know, its first phase of life is over. I plan to give it a new home in a different use, but it's done what it was supposed to do, and so we're going to take a little bit of time to reflect on how well it did that.
Ironically, we've been talking about making watercrafts for a long time, and there's one story in particular we want to tell you that kind of instigated a lot of these like thoughts and what eventually led to us building the boat. But it all, like the one single piece of footage I wanted out of this whole week more than anything else was I really wanted a clip of us in the boat with a camera on the boat facing the shore with flags on the boat and people on the shore following us, and I got like half an hour of that.
Yeah,
and it's good. Day 3, Dominion Day 3 is a good video.
So
I'm very happy
with the parameters that Grayson set up in the I want to build a boat video, and set up to me about 6 months before that video was made. We fulfilled them very well. I think that's our general consensus. It's regrettable we didn't get to use it for more than a week. For various reasons, we were just sort of tight schedule-wise. The boat took us 3 days to build, but each of those 3 days were separated by 2 weeks. And so the boat actually took us over 4 weeks to build. So
and each of those 3 days, well, the first one was 17 hours. The second one was like 15 or 16.
Yeah, and the third one was like 2. But, okay, so it really only took us about 2 hours. 2 days, sorry.
Yeah.
2 full days. But we got a proper use. West Bush Lake, I'd never played AIC there, and Grayson wasn't, like, you didn't do a whole bunch of working there, but it was the perfect spot for the boat. It was better than any other park I've ever seen for this use. Yeah. So I'm very glad that it's 1 week of actual hardcore weekly use happened there, because it would have been a real stretch to use it at Tony Schmidt or somewhere else.
It wouldn't have even been a stretch. It would just been impossible during the game. There's not a good place for it.
It would not have been even remotely useful tactically. No. Was it remotely useful tactically here? Barely. Somewhat.
It was pretty substantial.
It was cool, and
it saved our bacon. I think day 3,
Wednesday,
Day 3
was the
came
flag
in clutch.
day. Yeah.
It essentially. So I guess, assuming this is coming out after Dominion Day 5, essentially our dear friends on the team of Ashkala got destroyed this week, like so hard. We got ruined. Like we were behind on Monday, and the lead literally just kept widening, and the only time where it stopped getting wider was because of the boat. Because on the boat we saved 3 flags, we protected 3 flag bearers for about half an hour, which was enough time for them to disembark, run to a spawn, and get the flags counted as points.
Honestly, like, the camp is... You wouldn't want to be there if you weren't having fun. And I can think of few things that you could build that would provide that would provide more entertainment than the boat did, I think. Maybe it wasn't cost effective in doing that, but I think it made a lot of people somewhat excited about it, so that was good too. But as far as what we did right, we actually built it.
Yes.
Which is important because, as we will discuss later, we have made a lot of plans that we haven't followed through with, and so I'm glad we were able to do this.
It's sturdy.
It's very sturdy. It's extremely stable, which was hoped for.
So the maximum weight we had on it Tuesday, and we never did that again. We had 4 campers, each of which we estimated were like I think 150 each. So that's like 600 pounds of campers there.
Plus and batteries and boat, plus two more.
Plus 2 other campers who are both, I think,
say
like
200-ish.
220-ish.
That might be pushing it, but yeah. So say it's 400. Say it's about 1,000 pounds of camper.
1,000 pounds of
plus the boat. I would guess boat and batteries and motor and everything is probably pushing 400 plus Grayson. So that's 1,600 pounds.
And we called it a 2,000 pound capacitance. So we're over.
We were a bit short, and it was getting to the point where it was sketchy, but you know, it held a lot of weight. It held it very honestly in a confidence-inspiring manner, and
could have held more. It could have held more. It just wouldn't have been confidence-inspiring.
Yes. So
we could have probably fit many more campers on there had we have just had lighter campers, because it was a tactical week. Most of the campers were grown up, and so we had a 17-year-old and 2 16-year-olds, each of which have large bodies and are tall, and that's kind of exactly where weight is formed from. So and we've had this been at a classic week, bro, we could have loaded up like 10 7-year-olds on that boat. Oh my god.
I mean, I would impose a limit, but that has more to do with how many life jackets you have than how many people you want, or how many kids you want to order around. But so what we did, we built a very stable, safe, capable boat. What we didn't do is build a boat that is easy to handle. The main issue,
I know this better than you do.
You do, is
each one of the pieces mandate 2 people to carry.
Unless you have a cart. But even if you have a cart, it's a bad idea.
Up and down hills and stuff, you want a second assist.
So
even just with like balancing stuff,
the boat,
the pieces are all like. The maximum length of all the pieces is at least 8 feet, or round about there. And so to manage an 8-foot span by one human is just not really practical.
Especially with that width and So it's the boat was not ever really. No thought was paid to portability. Thought was paid to dimensional fitment. Right, it was designed to fit in the trailer.
It was. But it paid for portability, just not by individual piece.
Yes.
It was the whole craft.
The whole craft was designed very cleverly to fit in a trailer.
That a lot of effort was put into that.
But no effort was, or no thought was given to the weight.
Because we could just assume that you could just carry the pieces.
There wasn't much we could have done. We could have framed out a 2x3 instead of 2x4, saved a couple pounds, but that would make it weaker. We could have
thinner plywood.
We could have
spaced out the beams more.
Yeah, but we only did 1/2-inch ply. I would not want to do like 3/8 or quarter. I don't even know if they make 3/8.
With how sturdy it is when you drill them in there, there's a little bit of tension.
You could get away with it. I wouldn't. So that was the main issue. The other issue, related to that is the screw L bracket situation. None of that was filmed because it's straight up embarrassing and kind of stupid, but every time you assemble and disassemble, you have to put in a whole bunch of drywall screws, and then every time you disassemble, you have to take them out, and 1 or 2 of them break, and a couple pull out. It's really not a great system. It's the cheapest and easiest, but it is not the best that we could have made.
No. Another part that wasn't filmed is so when we were first initially building the boat, we had all the pieces done, and we were setting them up to first put the brackets on. We spent a lot of time lining up the brackets, lining up the deck pieces, lining up everything, like getting it down to the centimeter, down to the millimeter.
Yeah, because you want it's a very dynamic thing, because each pontoon is 2 sections, and there's 3 deck sections, and you want them to be straight to their own pontoons and to the decks and everything. But the secret is you don't need to.
They don't need to be straight.
It doesn't matter that much at the speeds we're playing with.
So easy to attach things. Like Wednesday when we were doing stuff, I threw in those screws so dang fast, because essentially the process is you set out one pontoon, you line up the middle, and you screw that in, and then as soon as you line up the far side, you slap the other deck pieces on and slap screws in them so fast, because all you have to do is make sure that they're like
basically parallel
with the thing, and you don't even have to worry about angle to the other decks, because you just slam them into each other and they hold flat. It's incredibly easy to get everything set together.
If we were going to build a different one, I think we would try to find ways to make it more lightweight and more friendly to transport. More like 2 monohulls with a structure between them than 2 structures with a deck between them. Something like that. Because the pontoon layout is very optimal for this. It's extremely safe, it's extremely stable, it's extremely... I mean, it's basically just easy to design. You collect things that are much lighter than water, and you just calculate. You know, you go to Omni Calculator, you type in inches by inches by inches, and you get gallons, you multiply that by 8.34. This is trade secrets I'm revealing right here.
Good God.
And that's how you design a boat. But all in all, I'm pleased with it, especially as the one who didn't pay for it. It wasn't the cheapest endeavor. It was, do you want to say the total?
We'll give some inflated numbers. How about
the material total was about $800, and the batteries are about $100 a pop, and the motor was about $250.
So really, it's $1,000 a boat, a little more than $1,000 a boat.
Yeah.
You don't need both batteries. You can totally do one.
You could do one.
It just
easy.
decreases your lifespan.
Yeah.
But
for that
on
use
Wednesday,
case, I would do 1 battery and 100-watt solar panel, and then just leave it sit.
Yeah.
But
well, how much is solar panel? $40.
About $100 a watt. Oh no, sorry, about $1 a watt. So $100 for a 100-watt panel. Not 100 a watt. Sorry. Yeah. Never mind.
Oh no, the
so,
boat just got $100 more expensive. Even a smaller panel, and then just like the battery and the motor.
You can do a lot with 100 watts. And it won't be pumping that out because it's not going to be perfectly angled, it's not going to be optimal, but say you're trickle charging 50, that's about 1/10 of wide open throttle. So, and really you aren't running at wide open throttle all that much. I think you could get through a round with 1 battery and a solar panel, no problem.
You can get through a round with 1 battery with slight issue. You just start slowing down.
If you're sending it everywhere, you'll have more trouble, but if you don't, you're fine.
That Wednesday, we were having to so essentially the event on Wednesday is we got all the flags on the boat, and then we started going back and forth across the coastline, and it got to a point where we were ordered to land every 10 minutes, and every time we get close to land, all the people rush to the shore, and so we kick it up to 5 speed and do a UE and go back out into deeper water because they start shooting arrows at us, and we faked them out about 3 or 4 times before we actually landed for real. But each one of those times, it was essentially full speed in, full speed turn, full speed back, and then shift it to lower when you're in deeper water. That starts burning your battery. And so after we offboarded all the flag carriers, this wasn't in the video, I boated it back to our respawn, the game ended, and then we boated it back to our staging area after lunch, and the boat back to the staging area, we had it at max speed the full way, and we were going,
you could tell,
marginally slower.
Yeah.
Much slower. And so we just took, or I just took greater diligence to leave the batteries charged more and keep everything good. So yeah, it'll eat through a full battery. All right.
It'll do it.
It'll do it.
For if you're curious, the batteries are about 100 amp hours. The motor draws about 50 amps wide open. But you really shouldn't be lowering the batteries more than about 2/3 if you want them to last for a long time. So, whatever.
You could definitely conserve and keep it running low for a pretty long time if you need it.
Oh yeah, if you left that thing on 3, you get wherever you need to.
Well, not fast.
Not quickly, but you would get there.
You would get there, yeah.
Unless you're fighting a strong current. So
yeah,
I think that's enough on the boat. I'm generally pleased with how it went. It was a good experiment. I hope it inspires some people to build similar things, because you can build a great boat for a lot less money than we did.
Yeah.
You can get, I wouldn't cheap out on batteries, but you can get used motors that are great on Craigslist. You can get, you can build them in a more cost-effective manner if you don't care about the folding or the aesthetics, perhaps. I would look into inexpensive plastic totes to build a raft with.
Yeah.
That's probably the cheapest frontier of raft construction.
The largest cost-saving measure is just going to be scale.
Yeah.
So, for reference, on the registration, the legal documents, the boat is 15 foot 4 inch long, and it's
true also, but yeah.
You measured it?
Well, no, we just cut 4 inches off of each pontoon, so that's an extra 4.
But we cut more off the
Yeah, that was fudged in a little bit, but it's
Anyway,
it's 15.4 approximately.
It's 16. Yeah. I keep calling it 16 feet long because like that's what it was before we cut it. Like if you didn't make it that long, if you made it like 8 feet long and then had
8
like
feet long and it had
a 4-foot deck,
a third of the deck. If you had a nominal 4x8 deck, a little smaller on both.
4x8, bro, like 4x4 deck, like 1 or 2 people.
Well, I built that exact boat, and trust me, no, you don't want to have 2 people on there. But well, my deck was about 4x2. It was small, but
4x4, you could fit 2 people on it.
Barely.
Yeah. Maybe it'd be 4x6. Maybe that'd be better.
But whatever.
But like a much smaller deck.
Yeah, and honestly,
there's no reason anyone's gonna ever need to fit 7 people on a boat ever again at ASU.
I mean, potentially.
If you are gonna fit 7 people on a boat, you're not gonna make the type of boat that we did. You're gonna make a much sturdier, much larger craft that will not be collapsible. This is perhaps the max.
This is the biggest. Yeah, no, for sure.
That could be possible.
I like working with XPS. I like building boats out of it. It isn't cheap, and it is only getting more expensive. When I built one in the early winter of this year, I paid about $22 for 1 sheet of 2-inch thick. For this boat, we paid $27 for 1.5-inch thick because they just didn't even have the 2-inch in stock anymore. So it is more expensive, and it is really not that cost-effective anymore. So I wouldn't recommend that for any future innovators. I would say stick with buckets or barrels or totes. Potentially, if you're elite, you can actually build a monohull or build 2 monohulls and connect them together. But that's something I have not even personally done, so I won't suggest that. I'll just say it's something you should look into.
No, no camper's ever gonna be able to construct a sturdy monohull. Well, I mean, hey, I won't disparage the AIC campers out there, but like,
try it, see what happens. Yeah. Okay, whatever. I think that's enough commenting on the boat. We're happy with it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It lived up to its design requirements.
Yep.
And I got the footage I wanted.
You got the footage, you got the experience, you got to just drive the thing around by yourself, which is probably the most fun part of it, but whatever.
Well, the most fun part was having people on shore screaming at us.
That was also pretty
and
cool.
having to turn tight circles. That was exhilarating.
I think, personally, as someone who didn't really watch most of your normal weekly content, I think this was the best week of videos you've produced. Because, I don't know. It adds a layer of excitement that I enjoy, so.
Wow. Anyway, okay, so what should we talk about next? Should we talk about the floating city plan that is absolutely never going to occur because it would be...
Or the APC.
Terrible. Let's talk about APC last, because that's going to be some digging up of memories on my part. Let's talk about the floating city, because we've thought more about it recently, especially with this...
That's true.
Okay, so... Essentially, the plan is we did a lot of thinking about this, a lot of like numbers games, and essentially, oh my god, you thought the boat was expensive? Nah, this is tens of thousands of dollars.
So we have somewhat of a habit of designing. Wait, have we started? Okay, that was this. Let's go. We have a habit of designing some fairly opulent structures and never building them. We won't even mention all of them, but several have been maritime things, and one of the most notable, or at least relevant to this channel, has been the floating camp. And so the boat was one thing, right? That was $1,000. We built that in basically 2 days, and it did its job. It happened to, we had a very good setting to run it in. The floating camp idea is we manufacture the setting. We go out to a lake or a river, and we bring with us the bases, the castles, everything is boats. And so each team has their own floating respawn
and
area.
Everything is triple anchored, so you have the main platform and you have anchors out in 3 directions, so you won't drift as much.
Well, I don't know about that part, but they would be anchored at least one point.
Yeah.
You would want some flexibility in them, but basically,
you have multiple floating bases, and then probably a floating center console,
in the
and
middle.
then also probably floating smaller buoys, like objectives, like around.
Yeah.
And it's literally like pirates, but the pirates have cities.
And then all of the... So you have your respawn, and that's where you can, like, hang out or whatever. But then you have boats, and you have to row to other people to steal their flags, or row to the center area to do whatever.
Complete an objective.
Or you
King
can
of the Hill
fight boat to
style.
boat, or you can
jump from boat
push
to boat.
people into the water and take their boats. You know, a lake is probably better just so there's no current. But a river would be a cool theater. I'm thinking the St. Croix River north of Stillwater, which is kind of out of the market, is the main issue. It's a far drive for a lot of people, but you know, somewhere in a beautiful location with no one to bother you, and you basically don't go on land all day.
Yeah.
That was the idea. Now, the reason it won't happen is absurd cost and absurd liability.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the video, basically.
So let's do some fun.
We spent a whole lot of days in
absurd cost
in school, you know, sketching out preliminary planning for this.
So I adore the concept of, how do you call it, like the landscape idea of the boat we have down there. It's essentially a platform that has certain dimensions, and then it has a flotation unit underneath it.
Yeah.
The idea of the floating city is essentially that we could build many smaller modular floating platforms that would be each individually much smaller than the boat, but very similar to it, and tie them together or fasten them in some way so that they'd be rather modular, and so you could store them in each individually. And then you might have one larger system, more like the size of a boat, maybe with like a structure above you, that each one of the bases would have. And so you would have like areas where each one of these bases would be anchored out in the water. And you could have like sizable structures. Like you could have a base that was like 20 by 20 feet or something out floating in the water, like a sizable deck area.
And they'd all be loosely tethered together. And so if you fell between them, you could get seriously injured. But ignoring that small issue, you would have a balancing act to contend with. You would have... It would be a very interesting feat of landscaping. You could also alter the structure of your base mid-game.
Yes.
You could also, I don't know.
And the fun one that we were theorizing about is like, perhaps, depending on how we did the attachment points, you could steal parts of other people's land. Like, you could literally, like, do icebergs.
So you could potentially even have your flags be wooden structures that they come and tow away. You know, something like that. Another concept we were thinking about is if the main castle area had a climbing wall that you could fight on,
Some type of King of the Hill thing. So there'd be a flat area on the top of the climbing wall. What were we just talking about? Climbing wall, yes. Okay, so this is some like 3D geometry shenanigans, so I'm gonna try to explain this. Maybe I'll do like a sketch over us of describing what I want this to look like. But essentially it's a big iceberg type thing in the middle that has a sheer wall on one side and then a much more sloped wall on the other side that in theory would have like mounts on it or something, so you could climb up the sloped wall and get to the top, and there'd be some objective at the top, whether that be just like a flat spot to stand on and you're king of the hill, and so who's ever standing on there the longest gets declared king of the hill and wins some prize or something like that after 5 minutes. But the fun part would be this would be much differently attached to the seafloor or pond floor, whatever,
and it could rotate.
Yeah.
The floating iceberg.
What would happen if your iceberg, so you're standing on top of this iceberg, and if 10 people climb up one side and yank back on it with all their weight and flip you off the iceberg? That would be so cool. And if it like protruded 12 feet out of the water or something, it'd be quite a dive down, which is also like kind of a liability issue.
Yeah. So,
but like a tall structure that would protrude above all the rest of these bases that you could stand on, and other people could climb up to you and you could fight them off and like shoot projectiles from the top, would just be such a cool game mechanic. But
so realistically, could something like this be done? Yes, but I don't expect it ever will be. There's a couple primary issues. One, it's probably not a good idea to let campers control their own boats.
Very sad.
Registration of all these watercraft is going to cost a fair bit of money. It's about $40 at the low end to register a boat. Anything that has a motor in Minnesota has to be registered, or that's over like 8 feet, I think, something along those lines. So you would either have to have them in small inflatable road rafts, or you'd have to register a whole lot of boats. The other issue is all of these larger structures have to come apart and go down the road, and you can't get anything down the road without an oversized load permit that's wider than 8 foot 6 inches. And it doesn't make sense to build anything that's wider than about 8 feet because of building material dimensions. And so, like, all of these structures would have to come into 8 foot wide sections. It would be very expensive to build and store and then truck.
Getting everything in and out of the lake would be such a massive ordeal. You would essentially have to buy out the lake. You'd completely clog the port the whole day. Getting everything in and out of the water.
It wouldn't be that
bad. It would be hard. Even just getting one boat out of the water.
You'd probably build like a quarter of your boats and load them with the rest of the boats, and then go out and do it in the middle of the lake.
I wonder if you could
just so that you don't have to tow as many things. Something like that could happen. But really, it would be awesome. It's just not feasible. But just wanted to share that bit of.
It would be so cool. But it's just.
You know, it could happen at a reduced scale fairly easily with like 3 small bases and a couple little boats, but it's not going to be anywhere near as fun as the full shebang is the issue.
One base on the water of any size is too much. Any water base is just impossible to do. Or not impossible, just not very expensive. Yeah. Not really. AIC just isn't the right model for that.
Yeah.
Maybe like one private individual could have some like pontoon thing like that out on the water that would just like be anchored.
Someone like me, but with way more money. Basically. Yeah. I don't know.
For us, for camp, it just would never really fit. It just doesn't financially work anyway. So
anyway, there's that.